Sound check test 1 2 1 2. Sound check 1 2 test 1 2. Sound check test. We will be starting in a moment. Good morning to everybody who is coming in, checking in. Hope everybody's had a great holiday season. Shout out to everybody who was on vacation for the last 2 weeks. Shout out to everybody who's been working the whole time. Vacation's over. We are all back to work. For those who have been off, we are back to business. The topic here today, we're talking January 6th. Not January 6th, 2025, January 6th, 2021. We are going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it in detail here today on January 6th, 2025. Hope everybody has had, again, a great holiday season. Happy New Year to all of you. Welcome back from vacation. Those of you who took the last 2 weeks off, shout out to the hustlers and the ambitious who've been working the last 2 weeks while everybody else been sleeping and drinking and watching Netflix. But everybody is back to business today. Everybody, teachers are back to school, students are back to school, everybody's back at work. Let's get into it. Let's get into it with the most important work we need to be talking about, which is today's topic, January 6th, 2021. First of all, I just heard it was said, and Donald Trump had kind of already hinted at this, but it was just said that Donald Trump is saying that he's going to grant clemency, was the word that they said, clemency to 1,000 people who were charged for January 6th, 2021. But we got a lot of details to get into with that. That I just heard about yesterday. Wasn't even one of the points I was going to make here today, but let's get into this. Let me first just introduce myself because I don't even have too much background to give on this. We just need to get right into the material. My name is Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day. I'm a former 9-year professional athlete, author of 35 books on 4 TEDx talks. Create this brand called Work on Your Game. What we do over here is we help you with your personal and professional development. It's all about getting your mind in the right place, creating a proper and crafting a proper strategy and helping you execute it systematically so that you are held accountable for full implementation to reach your goals. If you happen to be ambitious, you're a type of person who wants to be in the top 2% of what you do where you already are, and you want to go to a higher level or stay at that higher level, then this is the place for you. You can find out more about that by going to workonyourgameuniversity.com. Let's get into the topic though, which is January 6, 2021. Let me start off first by not burying the lead. I want all of you to know exactly where I stand. This does not mean that I stand anywhere as far as being on a political side or supporting any particular political candidate, but I want to make sure I'm on the record. So make sure everybody hears me. Write this down. January 6, 2021 was not an insurrection. Did everybody hear that? Everybody heard me. Okay. January 6, 2021 was not, N-O-T, not an insurrection. It was not an insurrection. Okay. Now I'm going to get into the points of why it was not an insurrection. I got a lot of points here, so I got to try to be as disciplined as possible and not go too deep on any one point so that there's enough time for me to get through all these points without keeping you all here all day, because I got shit to do and a lot of y'all got things to do as well. So number one, first of all, for there to be an insurrection, by the definition of the word, there must be some form of organized leadership. There was no organized leadership on January 6, 2021. And the thing about insurrections, the way that you define them is that they can be interpreted in many different ways. Okay, so there must be organized leadership for there to be an insurrection. The whole point of an insurrection is that you're trying to overthrow the standing government. First of all, the standing government, January 6, 2021, was led by the executive branch by Donald Trump. Donald Trump was the president on January 6, 2021. Joe Biden was not yet president. Joe Biden had been announced the winner of the 2020 election, was Donald Trump was challenging. He had every right to challenge it. He can challenge an election. That's a normal thing that happens in politics. And he was still president until the inauguration of Joe Biden was sometime a couple weeks later. Donald Trump was in charge. So how is he going to overthrow a government that he's already running? That doesn't even add up, doesn't even make sense. So there was no organized leadership for him to even do this, first of all. Next point, there was no attempt to overthrow the government. The whole point of January 6th and what happened, and let me back up and give you all a framing here so that you understand what actually happened on January 6th. So we know that the 2020 election happened. My official ruling, let's just say, for lack of a better term, on what happened in the 2020 presidential election is that there were shenanigans that happened during that election. Am I saying that the election was quote unquote stolen? We don't know. If you say an election was stolen, you got to prove it. All right. They tried to prove it. They were not able to prove it. Trump on his side they tried to prove it. They were not able to prove it. So I can't say that it was stolen. But if someone believes that it was stolen and they're using that as a colloquially saying that it was stolen and they really want to challenge what happened in that election, I don't really have a problem with someone using that language because we don't know what happened in the 2020 election. There were shenanigans. We don't know if that was run in the way that it was supposed to be run. And with the mail-in ballots and all the extra stuff and taking all on to count all the votes, that's not the way elections usually run. And our lifetimes, even this election that just happened, every election, there is the election that happens that day. We get results for the most part that day. And by the end of the night, by the time we go to sleep, or at least by the time we wake up the following morning, we know who won. The person who didn't win has called the other person and conceded and said, congratulations, you won. They give their loser speech. Or like this year with Kamala Harris, don't give a loser speech. Send a man out there to speak for you when this whole thing was about empowering women. That's a whole different conversation. Send a man out there to speak for you at your alma mater and leave all your fans standing there and not talk to them. And then the next day you give a speech, whatever. But we knew that she lost by the end of the night, right? But that is what happens every single election. All of a sudden in 2020, we needed, how long did it take? Somebody help me out. How long did it take for us to find out who won the 2020 election? How long was it between the election day and the time that they said, all right, Joe Biden is absolutely the winner? There was a whole lot of back and forth for, I believe it was at least weeks. As far as what actually happened on that election, who did what, was it run properly and was it run fairly? We will know probably 30 years from now when people start writing books about it, but then everybody's going to have a conflicting account. The end game was Joe Biden was named the president and Donald Trump and his team challenged that outcome. The whole purpose of January 6th. So what happened on January 6th was that, of course, Donald Trump had branded this whole concept of stop the steal. All right, that was what it was called, stop the steal. So he claimed that the election had been stolen from him. He came out with this great concept of stop the steal, was galvanized his most fervent fans. And then he said on January 6th, we are going to, what they were supposed to be doing was certifying the election on January 6th. So he called to have a speech on January 6th in Washington, D.C. And he got a whole bunch of his fans, his biggest supporters, to show up to Washington, D.C. to support him and to hear the speech. So what Donald Trump did was he gave a speech on January 6th. A lot of people don't notice. He gave a speech there. And if you didn't hear the speech, you should go and find the speech on YouTube. Watch the entire speech and listen to everything that he says, because the language that he used in that speech is what people tried to use against him when they said that he tried to basically start an insurrection to overthrow the government. But the language in that speech basically exonerates him as far as I'm concerned. But if you think differently, you can let me know. And by the way, I'll take all questions and comments at the end of this. So he gives a speech. And then at the end of the speech, he says, okay, when I'm done speaking here, you all are going to march down to the Capitol building, which wasn't far from where he was speaking. And you're going to make your voices heard. And he said very clearly, and he said he's repeated this often when people try to use it against him. He said, peacefully, you're going to do that. You're going to peacefully go and make sure that they hear your voices. So basically, he was encouraging his supporters to protest. Protesting is allowed in the United States of America. Their whole point was to have their voices heard. They were not trying to overthrow the people who are in position to make laws, which is Congress. Congress operates out of the Capitol building. So the reason that they march to the Capitol building as opposed to marching to the White House is the White House is where the president is, and that's where Donald Trump would be usually. The Capitol building is where Congress is, and they are the people who supported Trump were going to make their voices heard too. This is completely fine. There's nothing wrong with this. Moving on to the next point. And we're talking here today about why January 6th was not an insurrection, quote unquote, is that this is not an armed uprising. An insurrection is an armed uprising. Armed. There were no weapons January 6th. Now, people might have used regular items as weapons, such as, who knows, flagpoles, barricades, et cetera, et cetera. This is not an armed uprising. You can't overthrow the government with a couple, how many people got charged on January 6th? I think it was about 1,500 people the last time I looked. About 1,500, 1,500 people. They're going to overthrow the government with no weapons. That doesn't even make sense. You can't do that. They didn't have enough people. They didn't have any weapons. How are you actually going to do that? So what happened on January 6th is that a bunch of people broke through the barricades that were outside of the Capitol building, and they got charged for that. That would technically be trespassing, which they have a right to be charged for. Some people were violent. They got charged for being violent, fighting against security guards and doing stuff. Then when the people got into the building, there were many different versions of footage that was shown from January 6th. So let's talk about this. On January 6th, of course, you had basically two different stories being told. What some people call this is two movies on the same screen. So if you don't like Donald Trump and you believe he tried to overthrow the government, you believe January 6th was an insurrection, then you look at the videos that show a whole mob, quote unquote, of people fighting through the barricades and fighting the security guards and trying to beat up the security guards and busting into the building and climbing up walls. And it looks like some Game of Thrones shit. These people are all trying to overthrow the government. If that's what you believe January 6th was, those are the images that you have in your head. If, on the other hand, you saw the other movie, which was after that part calmed down, or on the other side of the building, because there's a whole perimeter around the building, there were people coming into the building and security was just standing there looking at them, smiling at them and say, hey, how you doing? While they're just walking into the building, walking through, looking around like, wow, this is a nice building, taking pictures, sitting on benches and taking pictures of themselves, just messing around in the building, like a bunch of kids basically just playing around in the building. That was the other movie that was shown on the exact same screen of January 6th. So when January 6th happened, there's a bunch of people who were looking at one video and saying, look at this wild mob that looks scary and looks like people are just trying to destroy everything. Again, it looked like Game of Thrones. When one land decides to invade the other land, there's a big war going on. And then the other version of January 6th is these people just walking through the building, security just standing there, watching them walk by. They look like security guards in a museum or something, just standing there looking at them while people are walking by. They're saying hi to the security. They're taking pictures and nothing's happening. So you had these two different movies on the same screen. Again, you cannot stage an insurrection regardless of which video you saw or which image you had burned on your brain. You cannot stage an insurrection with no weapons. Okay, you can't just insurrect on another land with your fists, knowing that they have security, knowing that people have guns. And here's another thing about the quote unquote insurrection on January 6th. No security was killed that day. No security died from January 6th. This is a often repeated inaccuracy about January 6th. The only person who died on January 6th was a white woman, Trump supporter named Ashley Babbitt. She's the only person who died that day. There was security who may have had some injuries or bumps and bruises from maybe engaging with the people who were more violent. There was one person who was security who died a few days after January 6th. He did not die from any injuries sustained on January 6th. He died from a completely unrelated thing that has been reported by the medical examiner, but people seem to be holding on to this story, and that is absolutely not true. No security personnel who was trying to defend the Capitol building died as a result of January 6th. Only Ashley Babbitt died that day because she, and stupidly, tried to jump through what was a broken window. And when she tried to jump through this broken window with the security guard standing right there, he shot her. Now, do I think the security guard is some type of hero or brave guy for shooting her? No. The reason why is because she didn't have any weapons. They knew that they didn't have any. The security knew that these people who were busting into the building didn't have any weapons. This guy's a man. She's a woman. What exact threat is she posing? Now, I believe I'm not a fan of either one of them. I think Ashley Babbitt was dumb for trying to jump through that window, knowing that there was security there. And again, they're already knowing how much further you're going to go. What exactly are you going to do if you jump through the window, Ashley Babbitt? That was dumb of her to try to jump through the window. It's also not heroic of that security guard, that black guy who got a little bit of a social media victory lap after he did that. And then he's pretty much disappeared since then. For shooting her, you didn't do anything brave. Like, he could have punched her in the mouth and it would have been over. He could have just walked up to the window, boom, hit her with a nice little, because she was jumping through a window that it wasn't a full floor to ceiling window. It was like a window that's up here. So it was like, if she tries to jump through the window, half of her body is on the other side of the window, half her body's on the inside, and she's like hanging on the windowsill. He could have hit her with a perfect uppercut and it would have been over. All right. She would have had a bloody nose, a broken jaw, and she would have fell right back to the other side and would have been over. What he had to shoot his gun for doesn't prove anything. So he's not a hero. And he disappeared, as he should have, from the headlines after that happened. But you cannot stage an insurrection with no weapons. All right. Have I said that enough times already? I'm going to say that many more times before I'm done. Next point. Insurrections, ladies and gentlemen, don't happen in an hour. All right? You can't overthrow a government in an hour. I don't know if any of you reads history books or you read about one country taking over another country. When you invade a foreign land and you take over another country, I mean, you actually don't have to read that much history. You look at the country that we live in, the United States of America, and look at us going into other countries. It doesn't happen in one day. Insurrections can take weeks, months. What happened here? Hold on. I'm looking on TikTok. So this happened again. So TikTok just kicked me off my live stream. They said misinformation. What did I say? What did I say? I don't know what I said. It says your access to live and multi-guest will be restored on January 13th. So that's about a week from now. So they allegedly just banned me for a week. And they say it's natural for people to have different opinions, but we seek to operate on a shared set of facts and reality. No, we don't. But anyway, we do not allow inaccurate, misleading, or false content that may cause significant harm to individuals or society, regardless of intent. Significant harm includes physical, psychological, or societal harm and property damage. Visit our community guidelines for more information. Do you agree with this decision? No, I do not agree with this decision. I'm going to appeal this decision. So give me 1 second. Let's see if I can get back on TikTok. So I'm going to do the appeal. Now, this is like the this is the fourth time I've been kicked off TikTok for something that I said on my live stream. So 2 times I tried this and it didn't work and I stayed kicked off. And 1 time I tried the appeal and it did work and I got back on TikTok. So they say it will take about 24 hours to review your appeal. But the 1 time I appealed and it worked, I got back on in literally 2 minutes. So we'll see what happens here. I may have to wait a moment, but they didn't even give me a warning. The other times I got kicked off, 1 time they gave me a warning. I had said a certain word. You learn on TikTok, there's certain words that you can't say. I don't think I said anything crazy earlier when I was talking. So somehow, some way they restricted my live. Let's see. Restrictions, live access. Let's see if I can find out my restriction. So they restricted it somehow, some way. Live access suspended for misinformation, which is a bullshit term. So they say it's under review. They haven't given me an update yet. So we'll check back. So while I'm waiting to see if I get back on TikTok, let me continue with what I was saying. And those who were watching on TikTok, I should have told people before I started, they should make sure they follow me on other channels just in case they kick me off, which they did. And let me see. Let me look one more time, see what happened with my appeal. It's still under review, so we'll see how long that takes. Let's continue with what I was saying. And those who are watching on TikTok, hopefully they jump over to YouTube or Instagram, and they can always watch the replay as I continue. So insurrections can take days, weeks, even months. This was just an afternoon. What happened on January 6th was just an afternoon. So a bunch of people, Trump gave his speech. A bunch of people went down to the Capitol building. Not all of them did anything. Not all of them crossed the barricade. Some of them just went down there, protested, made noise, which again is a normal thing. Protesting is protected by the First Amendment, United States of America, and is even encouraged depending on who it is and what you're protesting and who's doing the protesting. But anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. This was just an afternoon. And after January 6th, it was over. It's not like this went from January 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. It wasn't like this was a weeks long thing. People trying to break into the building. They got in, they got out, they went home. And that was pretty much it. So again, moving on to the next point, there was no plan for anyone to seize power. That's what an insurrection is that you're trying to seize power. There's someone in power, some faction is in power. You're bringing your people and you're trying to take power and have more power yourself. The problem with this whole framing is that Donald Trump was the president. So who is he trying to seize power from? He was already in power. He was the president on January 6, 2021. So how is he trying to seize power? Who's he taking it from? He already had it. All he was doing was encouraging his audience to challenge the results of the election. And I'm continuing to check on TikTok to see what happens here. They haven't given me an answer just yet. So how are you already the president, but you're trying to seize power? Again, that's what an insurrection is. You're trying to take power. This was what it was. January 6th was a disorderly disruption. It was not an organized plan. It was not a systemic plan. It was an disorderly disruption. The only plan was, I'm going to give a speech. This is Trump. You're going to come support my speech. And then you're going to march down to the Capitol and you're going to make your voice heard. They have a right to make their voices heard. Again, when other groups have had protests, was there any problem? Did anybody have a problem when BLM protested after George Floyd? What was that? Not even a year earlier, about 6 months earlier, when there was a whole bunch of protests all over the country, not just in DC, but everywhere over the George Floyd situation. There were all kinds of protests. There was damage done. There were lives lost. There were buildings burned. There were homes and physical buildings destroyed. All types of damage took place during the 2020 Summer of Social Justice regarding George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, ostensibly. When that happened, nobody had any problem. People were saying that that's okay. Isn't that the summer that we had COVID? Wasn't that the summer when people weren't supposed to be gathering together and you weren't supposed to be around other human beings because you might pass the virus to someone else? They call these super spreader events, or you might get sick and then you might kill grandma because you went and got the virus because you were hanging out with people when you weren't supposed to be hanging out with people. Isn't that what we were told in the summer of 2020? But then when you had these gatherings, let's just call them gatherings. Some of you may call them protests. Some of you may call them riots. It was a combination of both. When they had those in the summer of 2020, not only did the doctors and quote unquote science just ignore the fact that these people weren't supposed to be gathering together because that allegedly was going to spread this deadly virus that was going to kill everybody. They ignored that. Then the other thing that they did was people came out and said, well, yes, even though we're not supposed to be gathering because of the virus, we have to understand that these people have a real reason to be gathering together. They have a real grievance, and they feel like this goes back many years. This is mostly white people talking about black people. They have a real reason to feel like they need to gather and make their voices heard, and we need to allow them to do that, and we need to give them a platform. And what was said in the summer of 2020, when all these people were gathering, mostly in big cities in America, because big cities tend to be where black people tend to be concentrated. And this was happening in all the big cities all over the country. And people were saying that this is completely okay. It's okay for them to go and be around each other, even though they may spread the virus. And it's okay for them to protest and march and attack and burn and destroy and burn down police precincts and destroy people's cars and threaten people in their homes and burn down Wendy's and McDonald's. Why? Because they just have a point that they need to make. This was what was expressed and told to us in 2020 when people were out there protesting for Black Lives Matter. But when people showed up to Washington, D.C. to express their concerns over the government's decisions and how they felt about Donald Trump in the 2020 election, all of a sudden, these people are insurrectionists that need to be buried under the jail. Tell me what's the difference between one group and the other. I'm gonna tell you what the difference is, but if any of you have an idea what the difference is, then I really would like to know what you believe the difference is. Let's check on TikTok and see if they give me an update yet. They still have me under review. It's better that they have me under review than if they just give me a result and say no, because if it's immediately no, they'll just say no. So right now we're still waiting. Let me see if I can find out where. They're not giving me any other information here. And this live was doing well. I knew this one was going to do well. I also knew that might happen. So let me see one more time, check before I continue on my points here. Still under review on TikTok. So this was a disorderly disruption, not an organized or systemic plan to overthrow. Again, how are you going to overthrow the government when you're the president already? What are you overthrowing? And Congress still certified the election results. Didn't that happen? They still certified that Joe Biden is the winner, and Joe Biden still became president when he was supposed to become president. It was a protest. Protesting is legal. Protesting is welcomed in the United States of America, as all of you know. You've seen different protests, different groups protesting. Some of you have even participated in protests. How all of a sudden is protesting this terrible thing? All of a sudden you're a bad person for protesting. There was no political objective other than, again, voicing an opinion. that people believe Trump won the election. They believe that the election was not well run and well organized and well executed. When it came to the law enforcement, this is something that people have been talking about over and over again, was that Donald Trump requested a certain amount of security personnel to be available in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021. And the powers that be, people are putting this on Nancy Pelosi. They were saying that the powers that be declined and denied and said, no, we're not going to put any extra security in place on January 6th. And that led to the unruliness that happened. Had there been more security there, and again, Donald Trump asked for the security. So he knew there were going to be a lot of people. He knew they were going to be angry. He knew they were going to be riled up. And he asked for more security just to make sure that people didn't get out of hand on January 6th. But his political opponent said, no, we're not going to provide extra security. So this seems like, depending on how you want to look at this story, seems like a chess move by Donald Trump's political opponents who said, no, we're not going to give extra security because allegedly, again, if you want to look at it this way, if his supporters come and they act crazy, then they're going to do crazy stuff. We can use that as leverage for why we need to remove Donald Trump immediately, why he's a really, really bad guy, why he should never be president again, why he's trying to overthrow the government. And we can leverage all that against him. That will require, that's some three-dimensional chess that his political opponents would have had to be playing and thinking ahead about, to say we're going to let it get out of hand on purpose just so we can frame Donald Trump and make him look like a bad guy, give us a reason to impeach him, attack him, later on bring court cases against him all over what happened on January 6th. You tell me if you think they were thinking that far ahead. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But the whole question does still linger. Why did they not come with more military level engagement to defend the Capitol when they saw? Because Donald Trump gives a speech, right? The speech that he gave, let me see if I remember him giving that speech, and I remember watching the speech not too long after it happened, because I wanted to see what exactly did he say in that speech. I believe the speech was about an hour long. Any of you ever heard Donald Trump give a speech? You know, sometimes he can go a little long on his speeches. So that was January 6th speech. This speech was, it was two words that he used, peacefully, and there was another word that he said that day. Let me see if I can find the full speech. So they say CBS, it says 27 minutes. I need to find the full speech. The full speech was January 6th. We will never give up. We will never concede. The full speech was a little over an hour long. So this video coming from Global News, 755,000 views, 1 hour, 13 minutes, and 1 second long. So it was a pretty lengthy speech that he gave that day in DC. And the point being, when he's giving that speech, you can see, if you're working in DC and you're trying to protect the buildings, you can see how many people showed up to the speech. You can hear what he's saying. And this is Washington, DC. The Capitol building's there. The Pentagon's there. The White House is there. All the lawmakers are there. All the politicians are living there and doing their work there. If there was an emergency happening in Washington, DC, and it was close to one of those buildings, there are people who work in DC who can make one phone call, and within 5 minutes, there will be plenty of security personnel on call, ready to defend whatever building. What if some foreign country had invaded us on January 6th and they came into Washington, DC, and they were about to do something? One phone call, immediately there'd be plenty of people there to defend any building that they wanted to defend. So they could have looked at the crowd that showed up for Donald Trump's speech that day and said, okay, there are more people here than we thought would be here. How about we send some extra personnel over there to the Capitol building? Because we just heard him say we're going to send everybody to the Capitol building to voice their opinion. How about we send some extra personnel over to the Capitol building so that when they arrive, we're ready to defend this building? They could have did that. They didn't do it. So is this some 3D chess being played by Donald Trump's political opponents to make him look bad by not securing the building? I believe there's an argument for that. And depending on, again, who you listen to, one side can make it seem like, well, these people are just unruly and terrible and insurrectionists. The other side is what I just said. There is another way of looking at this. But now, as we move on to what happened after January 6th, most of the suspects, and again, the last time I looked this up, there was I believe it was an NPR, or it was another platform that I may be misnaming who they were. But they were listing all the people, not listing, but numbering all the people who were charged on January 6th. So the last number that I looked at, there were 1,500, just over 1,500 people have been charged with some form of crime based on January 6th. So some of them were misdemeanor, slap on the wrist. Some of them were felony charges. Some of them just got like probation and things that didn't require jail time, and others got actual incarceration, prison time. And for any of you, those of you who live in the United States, even those of you who have not, okay, let me you know something. With everything that I've said so far, you have never seen a real insurrection. If you want to see an insurrection, go watch Game of Thrones. All right, that's an insurrection. All right, what happened here on January 6, 2021, here, I mean America, that was not an insurrection. You don't want to see an insurrection in the United States of America. All right, we don't want to see an insurrection, because a real insurrection is going to be some people who are not from here coming in with actual weapons and trying to take over what we do have here. You don't want that to happen, right? Because that will require everybody laying down everything that you're doing, taking up arms, maybe to defend this country. We did not get an insurrection on January 6th. It was a protest. It was in some levels, violent protests. There were some. So look at this, everybody. Check this out, everybody who's watching me on Instagram and YouTube. My appeal was approved. So let me tell y'all what this means before I get back on TikTok. So I'm going to pause what I'm talking about right now and show everybody this. So can I get some congratulations for everybody who's watching on YouTube and TikTok and LinkedIn and Facebook and Rumble and X? My appeal on TikTok was approved. So let me tell y'all what this means. While I'm resetting up my live on TikTok, and I'm going to take a screenshot of this because I got to use this. So this is the second time. I feel like Andrew Tate. All right, I'm Andrew Tate. I'm Andrew Tate. I'm the Andrew Tate of TikTok. That they just tried to bring charges against me. It didn't work. All right, for the second time. I'm gonna tell y'all why this happened. All right, because actually, let me get back on TikTok before I explain to y'all why this happened. And let me get TikTok back working again. All right, so yeah, I just won my case. All right, so they tried to bring a case against me. It wasn't real. Let me restart my TikTok. All right, shout out to all y'all who are on YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and Instagram. So y'all just saw this. They tried to bring the lawfare against me, and it didn't work. Let the TikTok audience repopulate. Just give me 1 second while TikTok repopulates, and we continue. So I'm gonna tell y'all why this happened, but I'm gonna let TikTok come back in here so I can explain to you all why what happened just happened. So those of you who are on TikTok, let me give y'all a second. Let me give TikTok a second to get back in here, and I'm explaining to y'all what just happened. So for those of you those of you who may not know, because there are times that I got kicked off of TikTok in the past. Appreciate you, TJ, for the super chat over there on YouTube. Shout out to the super chatters over on YouTube. And again, TikTok, I'm giving y'all a second to get back in here. Get back in here quick so I can continue what I'm talking about. Y'all missed a little chunk of what I was just talking about. But I'm gonna fill you all in really quickly on what was said, and I'm gonna fill you in on why I had that little hiatus from TikTok. Again, this is the fourth time since September that I've been kicked off of TikTok in the middle of a live stream. And here's what happens. So I know I got a pretty good feel for how TikTok's system works now, because I've been using this long enough. I've been doing live streams every day for, let me see, it's January now. I started sometime probably like September. So let's just say September, October, November, December. This is my fourth. So that's 4 months. I've been doing this long enough that I know how to recognize patterns. So what happened, and TJ said, this is why you fight. That's right. This is why you fight. Fight, fight, fight. It's like Donald Trump, right? Fight, 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 fight. So I know that on TikTok, if I say the wrong words or I say the wrong words, there's certain words you can't say on TikTok. I know I have a pretty good feel for what they are. There's certain people you can't mention. There are certain countries that you can't mention, certain names that you cannot say on TikTok, especially in a live stream. Even in the recorded, posted videos, you can't say them. I know because I've gotten warnings. I've gotten stuff taken down on TikTok. I know. So TikTok, I see your system. I see how you all work. I respect your system as your platform. I know what not to say when I'm on TikTok. So that's why sometimes I'll mention things and I'll say, I can't say that name. I can't say that word. I can't name that country. I know what not to say. And I also know that if I say it, then I get a warning. There's a warning that comes up on the screen when I'm talking on TikTok, and it will say, hey, We're giving you a warning and we're restricting your access because you said a certain thing that you're not supposed to say. I know what it looks like. I know what it says. I know exactly when it pops up on the screen, and I know when it's coming. So whenever I'm doing a live, if I say the wrong thing, I get a warning first. And then if I do it again, then that's when they'll kick me off. Or I might have to do it 3 times, and then they'll kick me off. But always they give you a warning first. This live that I was just doing just now, the one that got interrupted, and one that I had done before, the live didn't give me a warning. All they did is just cut me off immediately. I'm in the middle of talking and just cuts off out of nowhere. And I know I didn't say anything because I've already mentioned everything that I was saying. I'd already said earlier in the stream. And TikTok has some really good artificial intelligence because as soon as you say the word, it immediately pops up and says, no, you can't say that. It's like it's listening to what you're saying. I don't think it's a human. I think it's technology. I'm pretty sure it's technology. There's millions of people using this at the same time. I don't think they're just sitting around watching me. So this one, same thing that happened last time, it just cut off immediately with no warnings, which means, let me explain to y'all what actually happened here, which means some of you mofos who are watching this don't like what I'm saying. So you went and reported my live and got me kicked down. Problem is, bitches, you didn't win. I won. Y'all tried and you failed. Okay. Fight. All right. You tried and you failed to stop me from saying what it is that I want to say. It did not work. Well, it did. Actually, it did work. It worked for 10 minutes. And then we came back. All right. So you motherfuckers tried. Bitch, you failed. All right. You could try again. It's not going to work again. Okay. So now let me fill y'all on TikTok in on a couple things. First of all, if you're following me on TikTok, please make sure you follow me on YouTube and Instagram because this can happen again. All right. There's some people who don't like the things that I'm saying on here, and they will coordinate to get my lives interrupted while I'm talking. So make sure you follow me on YouTube and you follow me on Instagram. So just in case if I'm ever going live and you notice it just cuts off out of nowhere, that means only one of 3 things could have happened. Either A, I forgot to pay the internet bill and they cut it off in the middle of my live. That usually is not going to happen. B, then what's the other thing? The other thing is B, that maybe there was some type of invasion that happened here and it just knocked everything. The whole building fell down. At that point, don't worry about YouTube or Instagram. Call the cops. Or C, there were some hating motherfuckers who didn't like what I was saying and they band together to get my live restricted. And then I got to go through the appeal process, which cost me 15 minutes. So anytime you see me going live and it just cuts off out of nowhere with no announcement for me that I'm ending the live, one of those 3 things happened. Either I didn't pay the internet bill, a plane crashed into my home, knock on wood, that doesn't happen, or C, there was some hating motherfuckers trying to knock me off. Because on TikTok, I will even tell y'all when I'm talking, if I say something and TikTok flashes the warning up on the screen and says, hey, you said something that's a restricted word. They don't say it that way, but they'll tell you. If you say a restricted word, they'll tell you. I will tell you all, hey, TikTok just told me I said something I shouldn't say. Let me shift gears and go somewhere else. Because I did that before. I was talking about some people that are going to be in Trump's cabinet, allegedly. And I was saying something about a certain person. I'm not even going to say their name to tempt the system right now. And it gave me a warning. And I said, I don't even know what I said, but let's shift gears and not talk about that. So anytime that happens, I will announce that it happened. This time that didn't happen. It just cut off out of nowhere. So again, you haters who were over there on TikTok, I don't even like using the word haters, but those of you who hated what I was saying and got me kicked off, all you did was cost me 10 minutes, but I'm back, bitches. So now let's continue what I was talking about. So Congress still certified the election. I said that. So again, whatever the people on January 6th were trying to do, allegedly, they didn't do it. I don't think they were trying to do that. I think they were just trying to make their voices heard. And it was a protest. Protest is legal in America. We all know that protest is legal. All right. BLM, there were protests. There are protests for everything. People protest for shit all the time. There's all kinds of protests. Some of them are big. Some of them are small. People protest when they like people who work, union workers. They protest. I see protests in Miami all the time. Like once every 2-3 months, I'll see the same people protesting the same thing because they're trying to get more money, like union workers or Teamsters or people who work on boats, and they'll do protests all the time. So protesting is normal in America. That's the reason why the First Amendment is the First Amendment. People had a right to say what they want to say, even if they're disagreeing with the people who are in power. I don't believe there was any political objective to this. And I'm going to answer questions and comments at the end, by the way. I don't believe there was any real political objective to this other than, hey, we just want to get our voices heard. And again, the guy who organized this or called for it, let's say that, Donald Trump, he was the president. So again, what is he overthrowing? Can somebody explain to me what Donald Trump's overthrowing? He's the president when it's happening. And as I said before, I got back on TikTok. Y'all haven't seen a real insurrection, and you probably don't want to. We don't want to see an insurrection. So there's a specific legal definition on when it comes to insurrections. One definition, and this is straight off this is from ChatGPT, but they gathered multiple sources here because there are many different ways to interpret the word insurrection. That's the reason why there's an argument about it, because there are different ways to interpret what the word means. And then there's the legal interpretation. So any of you knows anything about the legal system, especially in the United States of America, but this applies all over the world, is that the legal system, and I'm not a lawyer, but I do play one on TikTok, is that the legal system is based on laws that are written down. The problem is, or the challenge with the legal system, is that the judiciary system's job is to interpret the law. It's not that they are just defending the law as it is, because it's not black and white. It's based on interpretation. So there are three branches of the government. You have the executive, which includes the president. You have the legislature. That's the people at the Capitol. They pass bills that become laws that are signed by the president. And then you have the judicial branch. Their job is to interpret the law. So that word interpret is very important, because when you're interpreting the law, if I'm a judge and you're a judge, somebody could come in my courtroom with a challenge. Let's say their challenge is they say that somebody stole some money from them. I interpret the law in a way that I say, okay, the plaintiff wins and defendant, you had to pay them $1,000. I interpret the law that way. Somebody come into your courtroom the same day with the same situation. They say, plaintiff says somebody stole money from me. You can interpret the law completely differently, not completely differently, but differently enough that you say, no, plaintiff, you're wrong. You didn't prove your case strong enough. The defendant, you don't have to pay any money to them. And that's the binding outcome from both situations. The challenge with interpretation of the law is that two different judges can interpret the law completely different ways. This is why people get so excited about the appointments to the Supreme Court, because a judge that is allegedly conservative leaning, and hopefully every judge is just straight up and down, but we know humans are human. So a conservative leaning judge is going to interpret the law more conservatively, whereas a allegedly liberal leaning judge is going to interpret the law more liberally. So this is why people get all excited about which president gets to appoint which justices to the Supreme Court, because everything can be interpreted in a different way. So back to insurrections. There's a specific legal definition. One definition of an insurrection is incitement. Incitement. That means encouraging others to rebel. Another definition of insurrection is engagement, direct participation in the said activities. Now, did Donald Trump actually participate? I don't think so. I don't think he was down at the Capitol breaking through barriers. The third interpretation of the word insurrection is assistance. Assistance means providing support to those involved. The fourth interpretation, now you see how this gets tricky already? The fourth interpretation of insurrection is aiding or comforting, or in other words, helping individuals who are engaged. I don't believe any of these criteria were met specifically by Donald Trump, because people are putting this all on Trump, right? Trump tried to overthrow the government. People still say this on social media like every day. I can't believe Donald Trump tried to overthrow the government. Donald Trump staged an insurrection. How could they vote for Donald Trump when he tried to overthrow the government? No other country in the world would vote for a guy who tried to overthrow the government. People say this all the time. I don't think Donald Trump did any of these four things. Let me say what they are again. If you disagree, you let me know. Incitement means encouraging people to rebel. Now, again, protesting is not, if you want to call that rebelling, then we got to put that on everybody. Then everybody's an insurrectionist. Again, protesting is allowed. Rebelling would mean you're actually physically doing something to try to stop the government from operating. And again, the people who did that, they got charged with trespassing, all right, which is what they're supposed to do. But did Donald Trump encourage people to do that? I would say no. So this is the first definition of insurrection. Did Donald Trump encourage people to physically do something to stop the operation of the government? I would say no, he did not. What he encouraged them to do was protest and have their voices heard, which again is legal in the United States. The second one is engagement. That means directly participating in the activity. Did Donald Trump directly participate in this? I would say no. All he did was give a speech. He encouraged people to march and protest, which again is protected by the First Amendment in the United States Constitution. So I would say no to that. 3 is assistance. Did he provide support to those involved? No, he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything that day. All he did was give a speech. They went and did what they did. He didn't provide them any support. And people will say one of the challenges that people gave to Trump. And one of the pretexts that were used as a convenient reason to kick him off of all social media is that the social media platforms declared, well, Donald Trump didn't do enough or say enough to tell the January 6th protesters to back off and calm down and stop doing stuff. He kind of pushed them to keep going. I don't agree with that. But again, there are many people who do believe that. I'm open to that discussion. But did he provide assistance to them? I would say no, he did not. Did he provide support? No. Some people think he didn't do enough to tell them to chill out. Okay, there's an argument for that, but I don't believe he is required to do that. I believe that he believed the election was stolen from him. And I believe that he told them, go and voice your opinion because you support me. If you think things didn't go right here and there were shenanigans, then go ahead and voice that opinion. He has a right to do that. He hasn't had to tell them to stop. Again, who told BLM to start? Who told BLM protesters to stop in the summer of 2020? Nobody told them to stop. They said, just keep doing it as much as you want. Kamala Harris, and this is on the record. She was posting on social media, we're going to gather money to bail people out who got arrested during the BLM protests. Why is nobody calling her for an insurrectionist? Just because it wasn't in DC? So again, it seems like there's multiple standards. Not seems like. We know there are multiple standards when it comes to Trump. But moving on. The last one is aiding or comforting. Did Trump aid or comfort anyone from January 6th? I don't think so. Actually, a lot of people criticized him and said he didn't do enough to aid or comfort the people from January 6th. So I don't think anybody has an argument with that. So none of these criteria were met by Trump. So the term insurrection, again, this is straight from ChatGPT, gathers the information from its knowledge base, and it also looks through the internet. It generally refers to an organized, active uprising. 3 words again. Let me say those 3 words again. Organized, active uprising. Was January 6th an organized and active uprising? No, it was an organized and active speech and protest. It was not an uprising. Uprising means, again, it has to be against the government, intended to overthrow or challenge its authority or the rule of law. That's the definition of the term insurrection. Intended to overthrow or challenge its authority or the rule of law. What was the rule of law? The rule of law says you're allowed to peacefully protest. Peacefully and patriotically. That's the word that was escaping me earlier. That's what Donald Trump said during his speech. So if you watch the speech Donald Trump gave on January 6th, if you have not watched that speech, you need to, because the entire argument about the insurrection is based on that speech. That's the foundation of the whole thing. He said, I think the election was stolen. He said, I'm going to give a speech on January 6th in D.C. And then he gave the speech. Then everybody marched down to the Capitol. In that speech, he says, go march to the Capitol peacefully and patriotically. Those are the 2 words that he used. And those 2 words, he used those over and over again when he's asked about this, are his plausible deniability for you saying that he's an insurrectionist. And he's 100% correct. The fact that he said march peacefully and patriotically, he didn't say march violently. He didn't say break into the building. He didn't say beat them up. He didn't say what's that black woman's name? What the hell was her name? The chick who said, when you see these politicians, you see these lawmakers get in their faces, that older black chick. What's her name? From out in California. Some of y'all know who I'm talking about. The woman with the glasses. And she said this. I can't remember her name. Some of y'all know who I'm talking about. Put her name in the comments when you think of it. Maxine. Yes. Maxine. Thank you. Christy Coop. Maxine Waters. Yeah, she said that. When you see these politicians get in their faces. Yes, Marcellus, thank you. Get in their faces and let them know. And people cheered when she said that. If Donald Trump said that, he'd be buried under the prison. She said it. She got away with it. So there has to be an organized, active uprising. And that's what he did, was have an organized, active speech and an organized, active protest. Again, protected by the First Amendment. He did not incite anyone to violence. He said peacefully and patriotically. You can't say he's inciting violence if he actually literally used the word peacefully. And he said patriotically. How can you do that? Where are they getting this interpretation? Now, of course, you can throw all this logic and reason out of the window when you're talking about Donald Trump, because people are so emotional around the individual. So, and the last thing that I'll say here, this was a protest, nothing more, nothing different than BLM, nothing different than the pussy hat marching that happened in 2016 after Trump won the first time, or any other civil gathering of citizens who wish to express their opinion and wish to express their position, whether positive or negative. Usually a protest, people are mad. They're mad about something, and they have a right to do that. People have a right to express their opinion. This just happened to be in Washington, D.C., in a turbulent time when people are arguing about the election, and it happened to be in support of Donald Trump. That's the only thing that made people frame this as a quote unquote insurrection. And this was just an excuse. So let me go further here. When it comes to what happened at the Capitol, and I think it's big Donald Trump and it's bigger than the 2020 election. I'll explain to you what I mean. For people who don't know how the government works, I just told you the three branches. Executive branch is the president, the judicial branch is the Supreme Court, headed by the Supreme Court, and then the legislative branch is headed by Congress. Congress's job is to make bills that become law if signed into law by the president. That's their job. In other words, all the laws and the rules and the regulations you have to follow as a citizen of the United States of America, they originate not with the president, but with Congress, with the lawmakers. The challenge with this is that, and I got to be careful how I word this here, because again, there are some of these apps, you can't say anything that you want to say. Many human beings, especially Americans, especially American citizens, tend to put the rules and the laws of America that you are disappointed with, they tend to pin that on the president. And I understand that because this is the penalty of leadership. When you're the leader, when you're the figurehead, when you're the person on top who everybody knows and everybody can see you, you get all the blame the same way that you get all the credit. That's the trade-off of being a leader, is that you get the blame the same amount that you get the credit. So Donald Trump, Joe Biden, who was before that? Trump before him, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, go all the way back. The person who's in charge, you get all the credit when things go good. You get all the blame when things go bad. That's the way it works. If you want to be a leader, even those of you who are leaders in your own households, this is the deal. This is how it goes. The thing is, the United States is set up in such a way. Our founding fathers were very smart individuals. They created a system of checks and balances so that no one individual or no one entity could have full absolute power over everybody. That's why you have three branches of government that balance each other out. So the president can't just run wild and do whatever he wants. The Supreme Court can't run wild and do what they want. And the legislature can't run wild and do whatever they want. They balance each other out. The thing is, the rules and the laws that are in place in the United States of America are not because of the president. They're because of Congress. They're because of the Senate and the House of Representatives. Those are the people that, if you're mad about the way things are going in America, those are the people you should be mad at, not at the president. Now, I understand that people, presidents and candidates, will leverage this against each other. So, for example, during the previous election that we just had in 2024, a lot of people were upset about the state of economics and people's financial status. They said things cost too much, eggs cost too much, childcare costs too much. Well, we're going to blame the person we can see, who is the president, Joe Biden, and we're going to blame the person who was running with him, Kamala Harris. We're not going to vote for Kamala because we don't like the prices of things, so we're going to vote for Trump instead, even though Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are not really the reason why prices are what they are. The reason prices are what they are is because of, well, just straight up economics. I've talked about this already. But if you're going to blame somebody in government, you got to blame Congress. You can't blame the president. It's not the president's responsibility. If prices go down over the next 4 years, they probably won't in general. But if they do, it's not because of Donald Trump. It's because of Congress. It's because of rules that Congress put in place. It's because of what the Federal Reserve Bank decides to do. They're not federal. There are no reserves. And it's not a bank. I talked about this already. It's not really because of the president, but people tend to pin everything on the president. It's really Congress. So why am I saying all this? I'm saying all this to say the following, that when Donald Trump had his speech on January 6th, and a lot of people came there and they marched down to the Capitol to make their voices heard, here's what really I believe. This is what I believe spooked a whole lot of Donald Trump's political opponents, mostly the Democrats and some Republicans. What spooked them was that this was the first time, as far as what we know, as far as like widespread that everybody talks about, first time as far as what we know that citizens actually picked the right target. What I mean by, when I say pick the right target, I mean by protesting. They picked the right target in protesting because usually when citizens get mad, they get mad at the president. So we don't like the president. Let's vote this person out and bring in a new person. We like the president. Let's get him another term and let's support the president. This is the first time that citizens said, no, we're not going to go after the president. We're going to go after the people who are making the bills that become laws. They're the ones who are putting us in a position that we don't like. And this is the first time that Congress had all the heat on them as opposed to the heat being on the president. And I believe that the Democratic side, Donald Trump's political opponents, said, oh, shit, they figured it out. Because what is Congress normally doing? How many of you can name 10 people who are in Congress right now? You can probably name, most of you could probably name 4 or 5. How many of you can name 10? And Congress has, I believe, I was looking at it, is it 435 or 200? I think it's 435 members at max. There are hundreds of people who work in Congress. Most of us don't know who any of them are. Most of us don't know who most of them are. Most people cannot name more than 5 to 10% of people who work in Congress, but they're the people who are making the bills that become laws when signed in by the president. And they do this all day, every day. That's all they do. They just make bills and laws, and they argue about bills and laws, or bills that could become laws. They don't become law unless the president signs it, but they pass all the bills. That's all they do, all day, every day. And I talked about Elon Musk last week. One of the reasons that people start getting really mad at Elon Musk is not because he's standing next to Trump or any of that stuff, but because he started exposing what Congress was doing. And they didn't like that because Congress usually operates in the shadows. Again, most Congress people, you can have a congressperson standing behind you in line at the grocery store. You wouldn't know who they were. You wouldn't know they're a congressperson. They're not famous. Not on social media. They're not an influencer. Again, there are a few who try to make their names. You got the AOCs and the Jasmine Crockett's and who else is in Congress? You got the Speaker of the House. You got Pelosi. You got a few who you would know if you saw them, maybe. But most people in Congress, you don't know who they are. You wouldn't recognize them if you saw them. And they're the ones who are making most of the bills and laws that are affecting your life are made by them, not by the president. So when those January 6ers went and marched on the Capitol, this is the first time that the people in Congress were actually getting a whole lot of heat and attention on themselves. And Elon Musk made this worse because he went and started pointing out what they were doing. And this is the reason why they're really upset about Trump winning the second time is not because of Trump, because he doesn't have the time or the energy to call out every single person in Congress. There's hundreds of people. But Elon Musk, he got the time. Vivek Ramaswamy, he got the time. They're going to start calling these people out. That's what they're really mad about. So the reason why the January 6ers got such harsh penalties, because many of them, what they got should have been, if you just ask in my opinion, should have been misdemeanors. But many of them got felonies. Many of them got harsh charges. And here's the other thing I'll get to in a second. Another thing about how they found most of the people on January 6th. If any of you knows how they found them, please put it in the comments so people know I'm not making this up. How did most people who were at January 6th in DC, how did most of them get found by the authorities? Because again, they didn't have enough people there to arrest everybody on the spot. How most of them get found? But anyway, the people on January 6th were going to the lawmakers and saying, well, we got a problem with what y'all were doing. We got a problem with what y'all were doing. And that was the thing. So, yeah, a lot of people said cell phones, open AI, and Psaki gave me the answer that I was looking for is what Psaki said. People told on them. That's what happened January 6th. People told. So people who, yeah, it was video, but see, the thing is the video, the government couldn't identify everybody on video. Like if I just showed up in Washington, D.C. tomorrow and I did something and they got me on video, most of the people who work security in Washington, D.C. don't know who I am. They can see the video and say, all right, there's some black guy with a shaved head and a goatee. Who is he? They won't know who I am. How would they find me? They put the video out and say, anybody know this guy? Call us and tell on him so we can go find him and arrest him. Then somebody would have told on me. That's how I get caught. I got caught because somebody told on me. Most of the people who got arrested or visited by the authorities, and by the way, there are a bunch of people who went to January 6th, didn't do anything wrong, didn't get any charges. They still got visited by the federal authorities. They still got visited. They got knocks on their door from the federal authorities. This is an intimidation tactic, as far as I'm concerned. That's the way I see it. And the reason why all of these people got identified is because people told on them. Now, here's the problem that I have with people telling on people from January 6th. The problem that I have with this is that the people on January 6th, even if you hate Donald Trump, the people who showed up to DC on January 6th were going to the people who make the bills and the laws and saying they were voicing that they don't like how things are going, and they were bringing it to the people who are responsible. Even if you don't like Donald Trump, why would you aid in the, let's call it the punishment of people who were actually doing what you would probably want to do if you're disappointed with anything happening in America? If you're disappointed with anything happening in America, you need to be looking at your Congress people, the representatives from your state and the senators from your state. They're the ones who are responsible. And the thing is, they operate in the shadows. Most people don't know that they exist. Most people don't know their names. And if they walk past you in the street, you wouldn't know they are who they are. Those are the people you should be mad at. Most people direct all their attention to the president as if the president is the reason. The president is not the reason. Your representatives are the reason. Your Congress people are the reason. But since most people don't understand that, and most people don't want to do the work to think about that, they tend to be distracted by whatever the president is doing. And Donald Trump is a person who's a lightning rod for attention. I understand. I understand why that works. But it's always been like this even before Donald Trump was involved. And the people who went and aided in getting those people caught, I'm not a fan of that. I'm just not a fan of it. And this is not even about a snitching thing, because the question is, did this person actually do something bad? What'd they do? They went to Washington, D.C. Maybe they walked through the building. Maybe they jumped over a barrier. But what actually did this person do wrong? Like, what did this person actually do that was terrible? And most people can't answer the question. And the only thing that person did was terrible was support Donald Trump on January 6th. Okay, you trespass into a building. What do you get for trespassing into a building? If you don't have priors, maybe a misdemeanor. What do you get for trespassing into a building? Again, how big of a crime is that? It's a victimless crime. Who is the victim? Who are the victims of January 6th? Somebody tell me, who was the victim on January 6th? Somebody tell me who the victim was. Why such harsh penalties for these people? Why did they get hunted down like this? The reason these people got hunted down, ladies and gentlemen, and this is what I want you all to understand. This is something that if you listen to the bald-headed kickboxer who I kicked off all social media, he talks about this all the time. I've listened to enough of his stuff to hear him talk about it. He's not the only one, but many people talk about it. The mob guy, Francis, I like his stuff as well. He talks about it as well. Is that this was a loud and clear signal from the government letting everybody know that, hey, if you fly a little bit too close to the sun and let us know a little bit too strongly that you disagree with what we're doing to them, we're going to do to you. And that's what they were actually telling you. That's what they were actually saying. January 6th was not about January 6th. What happened to the January 6ers was not about what the January 6ers did on January 6th. That was not what it was about. It was about letting everybody know. And the reason why they made this such a big news story, and the reason why it's still a story now, 4 years later, I'm talking about it and y'all are listening, is because it was the government's way of letting everybody know, even those of us who were not there, even if you hate Donald Trump, even if you're a Democrat, it was their way of letting everybody know, hey, if you can disagree with us if you want, but you better keep it on social media. You better keep it on the internet. You better keep it to yourself and talking in your living room. You actually take the time to come here and let us know in person that you disagree with what we're doing. This is what we're going to do to you. That was the actual signal. That was the actual message that they were conveying to everybody in America on January 6th for what they did to January 6ers. Do not think that because you are a Democrat, they were not sending that message to you. Do not think because you're a Republican who hates Trump, they were not sending that message to you. They were sending that message to everybody. This is what's going to happen if you dare come too close to us and let us know that you don't like what we're doing. We do what we want to do. Again, this is my interpretation, but this is what they were actually doing to the January 6ers. And the part that has the wool pulled over a lot of people's eyes, especially those of you who are anti-Trumpers, is that people who are anti-Trumpers are actually happy for this. And this is the trick right here. This is the trick bag right here, is that people who are anti-Trumpers are happy about what happened to the people from January 6th and all the charges and the felonies, the misdemeanors, the jail times, it's the probations and all that. Those of you who are anti-Trumpers and are happy about this, I'm giving you a word of caution. My word of caution is the following, that it's only a matter of time because this will get flipped on you. All right. What if your candidate has the same thing happen and you decide you don't like what happened? What you going to do? I mean, we see it goes Democrat, Republican back and forth all the time. So what are you going to do? Are you going to show up to DC and support your candidate? Are you going to let the lawmakers know that you don't like what they're doing? What do you think is going to happen to you? You think they won't do the same thing to you? Same thing can happen. And those of you who were celebrating or happy about what happened to the January 6ers, the biggest problem with this, and this is the biggest challenge I had with Vice President Harris's run for president, is that they are pushing the idea of more governmental control, more governmental overreach, and the government just having power to do whatever it is they want to do to any citizen with whom they disagree. I did a whole live stream on lawfare last week. If you didn't see it, it's on YouTube. What is lawfare? Lawfare is like warfare, but instead of chopping your head off, they use the legal system to destroy you. And it ends up the same outcome, just you get to live to talk about it. Whereas warfare, you might not be allowed to talk about the story. Lawfare, they do the same thing to you. They just use the legal system and the courts and lawyers. And the same outcome is you are rendered completely ineffective. Only thing is you get to stay alive. That's what lawfare is. If you want to see an example of this, again, the bald-headed kickboxer whose name I can't say. All right, see what they did to him. Look what they did to Donald Trump, and look what they did to the January 6ers. All right, that's lawfare. See, the thing about those first two guys I mentioned is you know who they are. They got fans and they got people keeping their name alive even when they get kicked off the internet. January 6ers, most of you don't know any of them. Most of you can't name one person from January 6th, but they got the same thing happen to them. So imagine that happened to you. You got a probation on your record. Somebody Googles you, they're going to see you were January 6th. You maybe got some jail time. You had these legal situations that you couldn't pay for because you can't afford a lawyer. You got fired from your job. You got kicked off all social media. You got ostracized in your own community. And you got people who know you from college who called and told on you to make sure you got caught from January 6th. How you going to live the rest of your life? This is what they did to them. So when Donald Trump comes out and says that he's going to offer clemency to 1,000+ people from January 6th, I have no problem with that. I'm on board with it. I have no problem with it at all. Why? Because those people showed up to protest. They got a right to protest. All right. Did anybody get that kind of harsh response from the BLM riots? Again, there was more people BLM riots. It was in more places. There was more damage done. They burned down buildings. Y'all saw the BLM videos. All y'all got the internet. Y'all saw the BLM videos. They burned down police precincts. They burned down cop cars. They burned down gas stations. They were burning down Wendy's. They were beating up. There was black people, stupid black people, destroying their own neighborhoods. All right, this is what happened in 2020. Did any of those people get the kind of sentences that the people on January 6th got? What's the difference? I'm telling you what the difference is. The difference is two things. Number one, they were supporting the wrong cause, i.e. Donald Trump. That was the wrong cause to support. And number two, they were bringing the heat to the people who actually make the fucking laws. All right, do you understand why these people got harsh sentences? They were going against people who make laws. What do you think is going to happen? See, it's one thing you're arguing against the cops. The cops don't make laws. The cop's job is to enforce the law. There's a difference. Enforcing the law is a cop thinks you broke a law, they can give you a ticket. You can go to court and you can fight it. Again, that's the police interpret that maybe you did something wrong, but you get your day in court to find out if you really did something wrong in front of a judge or in front of a jury. So the judge and jury can render whatever the cop believed to be irrelevant. They say, well, no, the cop was wrong. You weren't speeding. We throw the ticket out. You don't owe us anything. The police don't interpret the law. So when BLM went and marched against the cops, well, okay, so the cops don't make the law. But when January 6th, those people went and marched against the lawmakers, okay, who are you going to turn to? If you march against and go against the lawmakers and they decide to bring the law against you as a retaliation for what you did, who are you going to turn to for recourse? You don't have anybody to turn to for recourse. They're the ones who make the laws. What you going to do? Nothing. Exactly. That's what happened. That's what happened. That's the real story of January 6th that nobody really talks about. See, people make January 6th all about Trump and insurrection, overthrowing the government. Bullshit. That's not really what it was about. All that being said, folks, let's take comments and questions here. Shout out to everybody who's watched through this whole thing while we went through a temporary kickoff of TikTok, but we got back on. Shout out to the people who try to get me kicked off TikTok. So let's see. TJ, appreciate you. Appreciate the super chats over there on YouTube. TJ said, saving this video for the future because J20 is only a few days away. J10 is first. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Peacefully and patriotically. Yes, you had the right term. That was exactly what I was looking for. Mad villainy. Thank you. Oh, dog, what's going on? TJ said, if you know the enemy, you know yourself. You need not fear the result of 100 battles. That's correct. Yes, right out of The Art of War. TJ said, Dre knows the enemy's ways, so he knows how to fight. The enemy in this case is not TikTok, but the algorithm trying to suppress the speech. No, I think it was people. I think it was certain people. I don't think it was the platform itself because I couldn't have appealed if it was the platform. They would have said no. How you going to appeal to somebody who made the rule? See, that's the thing. Yeah, they have money to fight back. Yes, exactly. They have money to fight back. But see, people who don't have the money to fight back, if that bald-headed guy didn't have money to fight back, he'd be still in jail right now. Same thing with Donald Trump. So Enigmatic Zach, appreciate you. Good morning on Instagram. Nicole said I was over there on TikTok and headed here. Yeah. So everybody on TikTok, please follow me on Instagram and subscribe to my YouTube channel because this can and will happen again, especially once Trump gets brought in. If I talk about Trump, I know I'm going to be pissing off half the audience every time I talk. So this will happen again. So make sure you subscribe to my YouTube and my Instagram. And again, if you ever see my live just cut off out of nowhere for no reason, it means I either didn't pay the internet bill or some people coordinated to get me kicked off. And I do pay the internet bill. All right. Brandon Joseph, what's going on? Hawaii 1902. Thank you. Nicole said they don't want the truth to get out. That's why they ended people's lives on TikTok. Yeah, I believe it was some of the viewers. I don't think it was the platform itself. I know how this platform works. I adjust pretty quickly when I see how things work. I know how to not piss off TikTok's algorithm. So I know what to say and what not to say. Big Ike, money, appreciate you. Shout out to you. Shout out to you for that basketball journey. Okay, Wire Concept said, when are you going to send out the daily messages again? I started sending them already. You didn't get the email? We're still working out some email kinks, but go to workonmygame.com. I'll put that in the comments. Workonmygame.com. Put your email address in there just to make sure you're on my list. And I'll check and see if you're getting the emails. And you can also send the DM with your email address. And I'll have my assistant check and see if you are actually receiving our messages, because we just switched over servers. So you should be getting those messages. We started sending emails every day again. Those of you who want to get my emails every day, go to workonmygame.com. Workonmygame.com. Put your email address in on the box, and you'll be getting my emails every day completely for free. I call them the daily game email. All right, TikTok, I'm coming over here for comments now. Someone said, can I explain what a free speech and the meaning of free speech? Well, you can just snuggle 668 on YouTube. Just read the Constitution. Free speech. You have a right to say what you want to say within reason, but you can speak out against the government. You can be negative towards people. You could be racist. You could be a hater. You could dislike certain things. You're allowed to do those things in America. In America, you could do that. Don't go to other countries thinking that you have the same rights as you have in USA, because you don't. Jalifa said, you are being so ridiculous right now. They knew what he wanted. What do you mean? What am I being ridiculous about? What I get wrong? I'm reading TikTok comments right now. Marcella said Chuck Schumer had dangerous rhetoric. Well, I mean, what do you mean by dangerous rhetoric? I mean, that term, I don't like when people call speech harmful or dangerous. I mean, people could say what they want to say. That's what the First Amendment protects. So labeling it dangerous or harmful, so what? I mean, people can say what they want. That's the reason why we have that First Amendment. Marcella said, after that, an individual was caught going after Justice Kavanaugh. Well, then that person gets dealt with. If you go after somebody and you're physically attacking them, then you get a penalty. But just talking is not a penalty-worthy infraction. Rock Providence says, less education, more jail is MAGA future. Okay. All right. You keep believing that. I don't think right now, not after Trump won. Christie said, quote from Nancy Pelosi, people just do what they do as the city's burnt down. Yeah, that was, I don't know if she actually said that, but I can believe you, Christie. I don't think you're lying when you say that that's what was being said. D42 said, if that's the case, then the message was terrible. Which message are you referring to? D said, when things are going well, the president takes credit. Yes, that's the penalty of leadership. The penalty of leadership is that when things go well, the president is allowed to take all the credit, even if they're not fully responsible. And when things go terrible, the president gets all the blame, even if they're not responsible. That's how it works when you're the person on top. And that applies to everybody. Texas said, prices went up due to Biden shutting down the Keystone Pipeline. Well, I mean, there are other factors that go into it, but I get what you're saying, Texas Rob. I get it. Brittany, good morning. Good to see you here. Texas said, when oil goes up, everything else follows. Okay, I'll take your word on that. I don't know enough about it to challenge that or corroborate it, but I'll take your word on it. G Black said, you're exactly right. Most people can't name more than 10 people who are in Congress. Yeah, exactly. And there's hundreds of them. And they're the ones who are actually making the stuff that becomes our laws. And again, all day, every day, they're making laws. Here's the thing you should understand about laws, ladies and gentlemen, is that they never rescind or take a law back. They only just add new ones. So that means the squeeze is being put on us. There's just more and more laws and more rules that are further constricting us. They never take a law away. They only add new laws in. So they just make more and more rules. Anytime something's going wrong in the country, Congress gets together and make a law to allegedly, quote unquote, fix it. The problem is you cannot manufacture certain things to be outcomes. You can't manufacture outcomes that way. But that's what our government does. This is the challenge with the government in the United States. Guy Jones said, respect the unbiased take. Thank you. You got the #1 badge too. G Black got the #2 badge. Appreciate you. Oh, Steven says, stop talking down to people. Who am I talking down to? Marcella said they do operate in the shadows. Yes, of course they do. That's the whole point. That's why they came so hard against the people who marched on the Capitol, because they brought the people who marched on the Capitol were bringing attention to the people in Congress who don't necessarily want so much attention. There are a few people in Congress who want attention. So you got the AOCs and the Jasmine Crockett's and Nancy Pelosi's, and there are some people there who want attention, or they call for attention, or they get it because of their position. But you got a few who actually want attention. Most of them don't want attention. That's why you don't know who they are. Bacon Bits said, misdemeanors. Are you kidding? No, I'm not kidding. The judge gets to determine how to charge a crime. So, I mean, it's all up to interpretation. So you may have a different interpretation, but it doesn't make either of us right or wrong. So Addis says social media. It was social media, video, and people snitching. That's what it was. People was getting told on. A lot of people from January 6th got caught because people who recognized them told on them. That's how it happened. And the problem that I have with that is that these were people letting the government know we don't like what you're doing. Even if you didn't like Trump, they were talking to the government. Why would you aid in someone getting caught for that? You should actually be happy. And Britt said the video shows, yeah, exactly. The security guards, they were sitting there watching them walk through. They were just standing there watching them walk by, like they were in a museum or something. Marcella says some people were held for nearly a year before going before a judge. Absolutely. That is 100% fact. Some people were held in incarceration before they even got their day in court. That happens in the government system. This is the reason why I continually tell you all, if you don't have the financial resources to keep paying lawyers, stay out of the legal system or anything that might get you in it, at least if you think that's some action you're about to take might land you in that. Tony Rodriguez says it was an absolute setup. There are many people who believe that, and I can't argue against it. Miss Jana said, I know some of those people. I call them the Kumbaya group on the other side. Some of the people who went to January 6th. Starhawk said the feds did it. There are people who say that. I say in the next 20 years, there'll be people who put out documentaries and books about what they believe really happened, quote unquote, really happened. It's going to be, everybody's going to have a different story, but we're going to get a lot more information over the next, it's 2025. I say by about 2040 through 2050, through 2050, we're going to get a whole lot of books and documentaries about what really happened on January 6th. Right now, it's still a lot of people just throwing stuff out there. And some people still have stuff on their criminal record about it, but there will be more. Andrew said the thing they didn't like was the democratic transfer of power. Get real. All right, Andrew, of course. Of course. I don't think so. Tony said you can't justify wrongdoing, sir. Well, define what was wrong. Who was wrong and why were they wrong? Thank you, Jay Red. Tony said presidents can be influential. They can be. They are. Of course they're influential. Presidents are influential. That's what they're supposed to do. That's the reason why they win. Christy said, Ashley Babbitt. Yes. Rashim Tony said the building matters. Yeah, you're damn right it matters. Yes, that's the reason why they got such harsh penalties, because of the building that they were going to, because the people who were in that building and what their job is. That's why they got such harsh sentences. Nancy said trespassing on private property is a misdemeanor tops. Yes, exactly. If you don't do anything crazy when you trespass, if you just go in the building, well, how is that a felony? What's the felony for trespassing on private property when the security is standing there watching you walk by? That's not a felony charge. And again, each judge can determine how they want to interpret the law. So it's not a black and white thing. Marcella said victim public opinion of Congress. Guy Jones. Yeah, I can't say that guy's name. I know for a fact I cannot say that guy's name on this platform. But everybody knows who I'm talking about. So you put his name in the comments. Yes, that guy who's bald-headed and got kicked off all the social media for allegedly misogyny, that guy. Can't say his name. Saki said a protester was the only death. Yes, that's correct. Oh, Stevens, why do you have periods in between your words? Nancy said the building is public property owned by the people. Yes, Nancy, but of course they know they weren't supposed to walk in the building. I get what you're saying, but it's trespassing. TikToker said, how do you trespass a public building? Well, I don't think it was open. So if they say the building is closed right now and then you go in it, then you are trespassing. Technically, you're still trespassing. So I get what you all are saying, but we gotta keep it real. Yes, they were trespassing, but it wasn't so heinous of a crime. That part I will say. Amber, what's going on? Good morning. Guy Jones said, do I work in politics? No, but I pretend that I do on the internet. So I don't work in politics. I'm not a lawyer, but I play both on TikTok. Tony said, the Democrats have been planning their own. What do you mean? What are they going to do? Tony said, you're speaking loud, but not saying nothing. It was not peaceful. Okay, so let me ask you a question, Tony. Were the BLM protests peaceful? Because the thing is about both events is that there were many people who were peaceful and patriotic, as Trump said, and there are many people who weren't. So we can't put a blanket over the entire event and say, well, it was or it wasn't, because that's not the case. There are individual people in there. Light bulb, is that light bulb? He said, we outnumber them. It's idiotic. Yes, but it's which people outnumber them. So you need the people who got the balls to actually do something to outnumber them. That's what matters the most. Amber said, meanwhile, they try to unalive the president, make no big deal about it. Yeah, well, I don't know who they is, but it was not as big of a story as it would have been had it been anybody else. I agree with that part. Let's say they tried that on Obama. What would the story have been? Would have been a whole different thing. Jarrett said, it's exactly what the government was saying to all people, no matter what side we are on. Exactly. That's the point that I was making. What they did was a message to everybody in America, not just to MAGA or Trump supporters. Randy said they set an unwarranted precedent to show us how they can flex. Yes, exactly. That's exactly what it was. And a lot of people who don't like Trump are missing that point. They're missing the real message of January 6th. The real message was not about MAGA or Trump, because Trump will be gone in 4 years. But what they said, what they were showing everybody was we could do this to anybody because we got the power. Guy Jones said conservatives can be a-holes, but Democrats are hypocrites. All right, no problem with that. Parsky said, this man think he woke. You talking about me? I'm absolutely not woke. I am not a fan of wokeness. Wokeness being defined as being highly aware of, what do they call it? Like not inadequacies, but inequities, especially regarding race. No, I'm not woke at all. So I don't know where you got that from. Nancy Gray said, thank you for speaking truth. Thank you. Light Bulb said, I'm over the division. You shouldn't get over it because it ain't going away. Guy said, is that guy completely innocent? Well, according to current situation, yes, he is. You're innocent until proven guilty. So until they prove him guilty, he's innocent. Nancy said, remember Snowden? Yeah, I seen a little documentary they had about him on YouTube a couple weeks ago. Lamar said, our government has literally gone underground. American people are a non-factor. Many people believe that. Now, I can't argue against it. Amber said, destroyed the property of innocent people and got away with it. For the most part, yes, they did. We're talking about the BLM riots. Yes. Linda said, you are correct. Well said. Thank you. Becky moved up to the #1 gifter badge all at the same time. Shout out to Becky. Guy said, do you need a law degree to work in Congress? I don't know. You're asking the wrong person. I have no idea. Yeah, let's get to 20K likes. We're at 16. Well, if we combine both lives, my live that got kicked off earlier, I was at 7. I believe it was at 7,000 likes, Brittany. And then you add this 16. So we're technically at 23,000. So we need 2 more to get to 25. We're going to add the one that got ended and this one together. So technically we're at 23,000 right now. Guy said, am I invisible? No. I read the comments after I say everything I want to say. So many of you, I'm reading your comment way after you posted it. Yes, Jared, you're right. Maxine Waters did that many years ago. Yes, G Black, correct. They were sending a message to all American people. Big Daddy said, do I think Trump will get sworn in? Yes. Nanda Gray said, what book would I recommend for sales? I would recommend a book called Secrets of Closing the Sale by Zig Ziglar. Great book on sales. And there are thousands of others, but I would start with that one. Nancy said, not MAGA because the Democrats crucified MAGA. Oh, yeah, they crucified them. They definitely did that. The whole basis behind the First Amendment is that people can make up their own minds. That's correct. Child Dresh said, can you read my mind? You already did. Well, thank you. I don't know what I said, but thank you. Glad I did. Nancy said, why are they charging people with terroristic threats when they use their free speech? Because it depends on what you said. Now, there are certain things you can't just threaten. You can't just walk into a school and say, tomorrow I'm coming back with a gun. That is a threat, and you could be arrested for that. So there is a limit to free speech. There are certain things you can't and should not say. But for the most part, generally, you have the freedom to say what you want to say, even if you disagree with certain things. Nancy said they want to make an example. Yeah, and they did. They succeeded. Chris said, I also heard they were treated badly, weren't allowed to talk to their families. Yeah, yep, that happened. Again, that's why I tell people, stay out of the legal system if you don't have a lawyer. Peter said, January 6th is already proven to not be. Yes, that's exactly what we talked about here today. Security didn't try to stop them. Sherry, 1967. Yeah, I know. That's the whole point. That's what we've been talking about here. In some places they did, in some places they didn't. That's why I said 2 movies on the same screen. So some people saw some videos, some people saw the other ones. Guy said, do people get flagged for saying it? Yes, I've been flagged. I've been flagged in the past. I've had videos taken down off of this platform for saying that guy's name. So that's why I'm not saying his name. So yes, he's the reason why he got kicked off all the social media platforms at the same time. Lamar said, Constitution says is a must that citizens rise up against anyone, foreign or domestic. Yeah, that's right. Most people haven't read the Constitution and they don't interpret it in that sense. Stan Jarka said, and the sheep are too dumb to realize it. Yes, that's correct. People are starting to wisen up. I think Trump winning woke a lot of people up even more. And what they tried to do to him legally over the last year woke a lot of people up. Everybody's not all the way awake yet, but it got a lot of people's attention. I appreciate you, God Jones. JJ 1996 said, it's illegal to say I'm going to. Yes, that is illegal. Yes. So there's certain things you can't say. So you have free speech, but you can't just say anything. Yes. Brandon said, reading Sell or Be Sold. That is Cardone's book. Yeah, I like that book too. Tony over there said, they've been saying that they will not allow Trump to take office. Yeah, I don't think they're going to do it. I've heard people talking about that. I don't think that's going to happen. The whole world was hijacked by Karens in America. Yeah. BLM riders. Yes, but see, they didn't even go after them. Many of the BLM riders didn't even get pursued, let alone caught. So that was the whole thing with the BLM situation. They didn't even go after them and try to find them, let alone did they catch them. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do these lives Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. All of you are back to your normal schedules, I'm guessing, by now. So tomorrow we'll be doing another one. And I don't know what I'm going to talk about yet. I might talk about this Fox Sports situation with this hairstylist who was working for Fox Sports. And then she implicated some names, some people who you know from TV for basically using sex to move themselves up the ladder. And then she got fired because she wouldn't have sex with a certain person. And I might get into that. I might not. We'll see what happens between today and tomorrow. What I'm most excited for right now is you see these shelves behind me. I'm about to get some new shelves. So I got a what do they call those people? Like a handyman coming in to build and install some new shelves I'm going to get here tomorrow. So tomorrow, these shelves should be black. So you see these white shelves, tomorrow they're going to be black. As long as this handyman does his job that he's already been paid for ahead of time. So that is what I'm looking for most. So I'm got to take all these books down off the shelf, put them on the floor, get these shelves out of here because these are starting to fall apart. Then had the new shelves get brought in. So I'm looking forward to that here today. And yeah, the Fox story is wild. So I might do that. I might talk about that one tomorrow. We'll see what happens between today and tomorrow. I'm always looking at the news. Make sure you follow me on, again, YouTube is where all the replays will be. So any live that I've ever done, if you missed it, the replay is on YouTube. Shout out to my people over on YouTube. I've been on YouTube longer than any other platform. I've been on YouTube since 2005. And make sure you subscribe to me follow me on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. My Facebook business page is Facebook.com/Work on Your Game University. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also on Rumble. I'm also on X. My X is Dre all day. So if you want to see me engaging with other human beings in textual format, that's on my X. X is Dre all day. That's where I get all my news from. So when I know things are happening by looking on X, and I do actually go back and forth with people on X, oftentimes disagreeing with people. But I enjoy doing that because, again, I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on social media. So X, what else is there? WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com. That's where you can learn more about working with me, my coaching, our speaking, our consulting, all of that stuff, our programs. That's WorkOnYourGameUniversity.com. And that is that, ladies and gentlemen. So I need to go to the bathroom. I got some interviews to do today. I got a bunch of emails I need to get to. I got this handyman coming around 1 o'clock to make and install these shelves and a bunch of other shit I got to get to. Shout out to all y'all getting back to work. Shout out to everybody getting back to work, getting back to school today. Do your jobs. Make sure you have your goals set in place for the year 2025 so we can actually reach those goals and hit them. and I really got to go to the bathroom. So everybody have a great day. Shout out to Brittany, my moderator over here on TikTok, for keeping us going. So we at 19,000. Can we get to 20,000? Let me stay. Can I stay here till we get to 20,000? We're at 19,000 on TikTok. Can we get 800 more? We're at 19.2. So we get 800 more likes on TikTok, then we will be at 20,000 for this live. But then again, combine it with the 7 from the other one, then we're technically at 26. But if we can get this one to 20, then I'll be happy. Can we get this one to 20,000 likes? I'll stick around for a couple more minutes so we can get to the 20,000 here on TikTok. We're at 19.6. These are going fast. J Red, thank you. Happy New Year to you. What else I got to tell y'all? What other topics I have here? I'm going to talk about network marketing. I told people I would do a live about network marketing, and we'll do that. I got one where I'm going to talk about the sources that I follow, like the people who I listen to when it comes to everyday news stuff. There's some people who I like, and I'm going to tell you who I like and why I like them. I'm going to talk about corporate greed versus capitalism. That's coming at some time in the future. Are we more divided than ever? That's another topic that is coming sometime in the future. Future-proof skills that will help you last no matter what changes in the world. I still got to go to the bathroom, but I'm trying to get to this 20K. Oh, we did it. We got the 20K. All right. And debunking hip hop culture. All right. So we got the 20K. Shout out to my moderator, Brittany, over here on TikTok. Shout out to everybody on Instagram, Rumble, X, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. All right, and again, let me say it for the third time. I got to go to the bathroom. Everybody have a great day. Shout out to the haters who tried to block my live on TikTok. Bitches, it didn't work. All right. It didn't work. I'm still here. Everybody have a great day. See y'all tomorrow. All right. There we go. And shout out to TJ. Thank you for the super chat over there on YouTube. Shout out to y'all on YouTube. Back tomorrow, 8 o'clock.